You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with myself, Skafy, and I have in the studio today with me, Lindsay, co-hosting this episode, Mr. Elliot, manning the computers, and producer Shell sitting at the shadows, helping Elliot to learn the ropes here.
Keeping us all in line.
Yeah, keeping us all in line and teaching Elliot the computer ropes. We are going to have a great show ahead of us. We're going to be talking about UFOs. We're going to be talking about Muslim water park event being canceled in the United States and why was that the case. We are going to have an interview with Rod Bailey today. He is going to be sharing with us another chapter in the guide on how to escape to the country. How to find the perfect property, if there is even such a thing as a perfect property in the country. How to not make expensive mistakes. Well, that's him today with us, among other topics as well, time permitting. But before we jump into your story, Lindsay, I would like to ask my mate Elliot to share with us another quiz question.
Awesome.
I can do that for you. Okay, so the next question is, who had 4 daughters who prophesied? Who had 4 daughters who prophesied? We got one correct answer. We got only one correct answer.
No, sorry. I know who it is. It's this guy here.
If you do know the answer,
him by the other one.
that is correct. If you do know the answer, you can text us into 0491064669. Who had 4 daughters who prophesied? And if it's very, very difficult, the answer can be found in the New Testament, in Acts chapter 21.
Yeah, imagine being in that situation where you have 4 daughters and all of them prophesy. Poor dad.
Okay.
Dad, I know what you've done
Oh, dear.
with the toilet, and there's no denying it because the Lord has shown it to me.
Oh, dear. I don't think the Lord wastes his prophecies on that kind of
I know.
topic.
It would be a bit intimidating here. Dad, don't even need to say a word. I know what you've done. And
He's raised
the Lord has already
strong
revealed to
women.
us. And, okay, what are you doing? You just have to submit. Okay, I'm so sorry. There's no way out for this father. But you know what? It would be a blessing. Have like 4 daughters that are committed to the Lord, that are being used as mighty instruments for the cause. That would be amazing too.
That's what you get for being a teleporting evangelist.
Yeah, all right. But I don't know if this is the same thing. It's the same person, though.
No?
I think
Different
there's people
Philip?
with the same names. Oh, you gave away the answer to the quiz question, Lindsay Lou. You shouldn't do this.
Did I say a name?
You did say a name.
Did I?
You did.
Oh, no.
You prophesied the answer before the time.
I didn't think
All
I
right.
said it.
Well, if you haven't listened to what Lindsay said, if you're not paying too much attention on the show, good on you today. This time you're excused because you can tell us who was the name of the man who had 4 daughters who prophesied to 0491 064 669. Lindsay, tell me about bushwalking. I'm in a bit of a bushwalking mode myself.
Yeah?
Yes, I've done this thing with my church where every Sabbath now, after the church, I just invite people to go on a hike.
Nice.
And I downloaded an app.
Okay.
There's an app called All Trails, which tells me all of the trails around me in my town that have hiking trails. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start braving each one of them.
Gonna do all of them.
Yeah, and look, I've been living in this town in Newcastle for 10 years now. I've been taken to places that I have never known existed before.
You should chat to our friend Harley and talk to him about the Stride app so you can also gain territory.
I can also claim territory in look, I think that some of these territories that I've been bushwalking, I would be claiming those styles and they're going to be mine forever and ever because they're off the beaten, bush.
Yeah.
All right. But tell us a little bit about bush bashing and good hiking skills. What should we learn?
All right. So there is a school in Armidale. It's called Armidale Presbyterian Ladies College. Armidale is in North New South Wales.
Shout out to Armidale. We have many listeners there.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of high school students who are at this ladies' college, and they have recently been going through some training called the Duke of Edinburgh Award. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Okay, so I haven't gone through it personally, but I know a bunch of teenagers who are currently going through it, some who've previously gone through it, and basically they learn a bunch of really good skills as far as doing things in the outdoors. Let me read out. There's a little spiel about it, just very brief. I have it here somewhere. Oh,
Duke of
dear.
Edinburgh Award. Okay.
So the Duke of Edinburgh Award is a non-formal education program for young people that focuses on physical recreation, outdoor skills, voluntary service, and adventurous journey.
Nice,
so
actually.
I knew
You get an award, an actual
Yeah.
like, medal or something?
it's I don't know if it's like a physical medal. I don't know how exactly that
Or a
all works,
certificate.
but it's certainly a recognition that they have done some really tough training to increase their physical fitness as well as their ability to serve others. And there's a lot of hiking involved. I knew a handful of teenagers a couple of years ago who were from Brisbane who flew to New Zealand and spent like a week or two hiking around the mountains in New Zealand, which is pretty hectic hiking over there. So this handful of teenage girls, they go through the training, and one of the things that they learnt in the training was how to make a makeshift stretcher and rescue someone who maybe has fallen on a trail somewhere, maybe broke a leg or something like that. And so they went through this training, and then they were like, all right, well, let's go for a hike now. So they went to the Warrumbungle National Park. Now, I love the Warrumbungle National Park. I want to go there one day. I just, first of all, love the sound of the name. Second of all, it's got some really cool features that I'd like to see one day. But these girls are living my dream. They've gone to the Warrumbungle National Park for a 4-day hike. So they're hiking along, they're having a good time. And on day 3, they came across a man called Thomas Wendland, who was a hiker who had broken his leg. Hold on a second. They have just trained for this. They know what to do. They actually get really excited, a little bit startled, but excited. And they knew what to do. They were prepared for this very scenario. And so they chatted with their leaders and they got into action. So they whipped up a new stretcher using some tarp poles and a hammock, and they created a gurney for Wendland to wriggle onto. Now,
That's amazing.
They're all like grade 11 girls here. And one of the girls, Stephanie, said that the team would count to 3 and hoist up the gurney, which they would carry along the trail just for 60 seconds. They'd put him down, they'd rotate sides, take some deep breaths, and do another 60 seconds. Can you imagine how long this would have taken?
Yes. Look, you know what? I have carried men on stretchers before, and
Yeah.
I learned how to do some makeshift stretchers
Yeah.
using, in my case, 2 poles of wood,
Yeah.
big long pieces of wood, and a blanket.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little bit different.
I know you can do it
from-
with some jackets as well.
Yeah, you could use clothing and so on. And let me tell you, it is extremely heavy.
Yeah.
You actually
Dead weight, big man.
Yes, you actually need you will want to have at least 4 people carrying
Yeah.
it.
Ideally 6 if you can.
Yes, so you can have take people turn. So wow, these girls.
Yeah, grade 11 girls. These are like 15, 16-year-old girls.
Yeah, wow,
Yeah.
that is a lot of strength.
But they were excited. They were keen. They wanted to do this. They wanted to serve this guy. The teacher said it was fine. They managed to make it happen. And so they're going 60 seconds at a time and then taking turns and rotating around. They continued like this for 2 hours until they could get Wendland to a location where medical teams could reach him.
Wow.
So they had to find a good spot on the track somewhere. They said the path just seemed to keep getting longer and longer. You don't realize how far, like, just a few kilometers is until you're shuffling along carrying someone who's that heavy,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, 2 kilometers, and if you are, stopping, going on and off for like 60 seconds,
Yeah.
like, it would take forever.
Forever,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, just a couple of Ks. You can walk that in like 10 minutes, right? Like,
Yeah.
I walk probably 2 Ks
probably-
in 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20
Easy.
minutes. Yeah.
2 Ks in 2 hours is very, very slow. So, yeah, that's the story.
Wow, amazing. Like,
Yeah.
shout out to these girls.
So I
They've done an incredible work.
Yeah, exactly. What I love about this story is that these girls were not only prepared, but they were willing and excited to help. thankfully, this guy was conscious. He'd fell on the track. He heard something snap, and that was the end of that. Like, he couldn't move from that point onwards. But I just love how there are these types of education programs where young people are able to learn really helpful life skills, and they're able to put it into practice and be, contributing members of society, and they're really excited to help. Even like, they're young women. Like, they're not necessarily the strongest people on the planet, and yet they were still able to pitch in and work together as a team and help this man to get to a place where he would be able to receive more help from there. And so I think it's really important that we have programs like this where young people are able to go out and be physically fit and learn skills. And our church does a really cool program called Pathfinders, which is very similar. Actually, a lot of the Pathfinders that I know do the Duke of Edinburgh Award as an additional part of their training.
Nice.
So, hey, if this is something that our listeners, if you're interested, if there's a young person in your life, a teenager who you think it would really benefit them to get involved, get outside, get out into nature, learn some new interesting skills. Maybe it's bushwalking, maybe it's kayaking, maybe it's abseiling, maybe it's how to tie knots so they can put someone on a stretcher one day. Reach out and text us Pathfinders, and we'll get you some more information, and we'll be able to hook you up with a Pathfinder club near you.
It is amazing. I run in my church, we run a similar thing to Pathfinders, but that's for the younger kids, called Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we were running with the kids is learning first aid.
Yeah.
And my daughter, for one, she injured her wrist at the playground at school. And guess what? She bandaged her wrist herself with the skills that she learned.
How old is your daughter?
She's 8 years old.
8-year-old girl. She knows basic first aid.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So it is amazing. They played, it is like now my daughter and my son, they always play together. They're doing first aid sort of techniques on one another and their dolls and their, plush toys. It is, fascinating. I think this is really love in practice, how to help your neighbor, going from just words into actually practical things. So great skills to have for any young and old person to have. So shout out to these girls. They were really used as an instrument of God.
Yeah.
In that day.
So Adventures, that's like 4 to 9-year-olds, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Pathfinders is 10 to 16-year-olds.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, hey, let us know if that's something that interests you. We'll get some information to you about that.
Absolutely.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
It is now the time that my friend Elliot is going to reveal the answer to the quiz question. Please, Elliot.
Is correct. Okay, so the answer or the question was, who had 4 daughters who prophesied? The answer is Philip. Philip had 4 daughters who prophesied. You can find that in Acts chapter 21, verse 9.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm still not convinced that I said the answer on air.
We have the recordings.
we will know.
Yes. And we are going to move on now because I have a few interesting topics that I want to share with you, Lindsay. Mm-hmm. First of all, I want to talk about UFOs. Now, we've been talking about UFOs a fair bit recently here on the show.
Have we? Okay.
We have because, there is some conversations in the United States that United States officials, they invited a bunch of pastors and church leaders from big churches into a room and basically saying, look, we are going to be releasing some quite confronting files and pictures of UFOs and reptilian-looking aliens. So your congregations will have questions. We're giving you the heads up so you can prepare them theologically.
Okay. That's kind of them.
And they also said, look, there's going to be we expect a lot of skepticals and atheists that are actually going to go to churches for answers to these questions once we review what we actually have in our possession.
Yeah.
So 2 days ago, the Pentagon decided to release 160-something files, mostly photos.
Were these all like really old ones that they've run out of their limitation?
They're mostly older ones.
Yeah.
And there's two very interesting ones. That, in my opinion, the ones that I find most interesting. There's one in the moon. There's like 3 solid objects that in the background in a photo taken by Buzz Aldrin, the famous astronaut.
Alrighty. Yep.
and the Pentagon uses the language. There's no consensus into what these objects might be.
Okay. What does it look like to you? Have you seen it?
Look, this is just 3 dots. It doesn't really.
Oh.
The photo's not very revealing.
Okay.
But it would be, but the astronauts were actually quite, impressed with
Okay.
the sight of these, unknown objects
Sure.
that they saw there. So that's one. But the one that caught my attention the most was a flying device that has 8 points, like an 8-pointed star.
Uh-huh.
Tridimensional star. So there's like 4 big points in the like north, south, west,
Yeah.
east, and then another smaller points
In between them.
In between them.
Yeah.
And someone pointed out something fascinating, that flying object, that unknown flying object, it reminded people of the likeness of a 1970s Superman movie. Particularly the flying object or the spacecraft from which Superman was brought to Earth.
Okay.
Looked identical to the
Interesting.
one and people are asking, hey, how does that object portray? Because look, this is not a typical object that you would think you would fly. Mm-hmm. An object that looks like a star. Mm-hmm. And yet, why was it accurately and precisely depicted in 1970s in this random Superman movie when Superman was coming down to Earth?
Okay.
And this is very unique shape. A lot of these objects, they have like a spherical shape, or they look more of a saucer and so on. So that I found that fascinating. I actually sometimes find fascinating how Hollywood just
Seem to be in the know about
seems
some
to be in the
things.
know about some things.
Yeah.
Yes, that will happen way in the future.
50 years ago.
Some analysts call this conditional programming. They're just
Yeah.
like programming and kind of getting people used to these
Yeah.
ideas so that when these ideas drop, there would be the reaction to it. Because this is the thing as well. Like, we are conditioned to, like, how did people react when Superman fell on the earth? Like, we were, if we see like a man that say, hey, look, I'm a good guy, I'm a Superman, and everybody will cheer him up, right? Most people will, because that's what we have been conditioned to. If it was not for the Superman movies, we would look at these people coming from the skies, the universe, like really suspiciously.
Yeah.
So there is, I think, an element of conditioning. Another example of that is that movie Minority Report.
I don't know.
It's a
that
Tom
one.
Cruise movie. It's an old movie as well, I think from the 1990s or 2000s, where basically they had these precogs, which would be similar to what we would call today artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But these ladies, they could see that you could commit a crime in the future with 99% accuracy.
What?
And therefore, we could actually arrest you before you even committed the crime.
Oh, dear.
And now we're getting into that space now where
Yeah.
AI models are saying, there's a very high chance that you're going to commit a crime, so we might as well act preemptively.
Yeah.
So there is, we spoke about it. I believe that from a Bible perspective, yes, there is alien life, but the alien life that we're talking to here, I believe will be probably Satan-led deceptions.
Oh, yeah.
I do not know
definitely.
exactly what kind of deception, if shape-shifting, if puppets, or if like actual objects or hybrids between humans and other beasts and so on. I don't know the exact nature of the deception, but I know it will be a deception from a Bible perspective, and we're seeing this at a time where every other deception is culminating. All the other signs of the times are culminating, signs of the times in the religious world with all the confusion that exists, all of the trampling of God's law that exists, particularly among, in Christian realms, the earthquakes and other nature-based signs and so on and so forth. So I think this is another one that is part of Revelation 16. Satan is working signs and miracles and special effects to deceive, if possible, even the elect. So that's that. There's another interesting story here from a Muslim water park event. So, have you heard about Eid
Yeah.
al-Fitr? So this is the event that marks the end of the fasting month of Ramadan.
Ah, okay, yes.
So they throw in a few days of celebration. And in the United States, in the city of Grand Prairie in Texas, the Muslim community decided to throw an event just to celebrate that. So far, so good. The thing is that they decided to book an aquatic park that is actually owned by the city for a
Okay.
private event,
Yeah.
which it's it's legal to do.
Yeah.
But then in their flyer, they're saying this is a Muslim-only event.
Oh. That's
can only come if you're
discriminatory.
Muslim. So that's one of the issues. It's only coming from Muslim. There's going to be halal foods. Women must wear burkinis. And
Burkinis?
Burkinis, yeah, which is a mix between a burqa and a bikini.
That's confusing.
Can you imagine that?
No, I don't think I want to try.
It's like
a
a full body swimsuit with a headscarf, basically.
Okay.
So all of your body parts except for your feet, your head, and your hands are exposed.
Radio.
And there are even instructions to turn down your gaze, meaning not being looking at other people's bodies. Mm-hmm. And there was a big uproar in the town saying, look, this is discriminatory. If we decided to do like an event in the aquatic park and we said for white people only.
Yeah,
would that be legal?
No.
So you cannot be discriminating on the basis of, particularly the publicly advertised event. You should not be discriminated on the basis of race, color,
religion.
skin color, or religion.
Yeah.
So the event managers, they backtracked and said, okay, we are, saying everybody's welcome as long as you dress modestly and you abide by the code of modesty. And that didn't really go that well either.
No. It's a water park. That's not where people are dressing modestly.
It's a water park as well. So in the end of the day, the governor of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, said, look, if you're going ahead with this event, I'm going to withdraw $500,000 that I was going to give to your city for security. So your choice. And then the city council a couple of days later said, look, in the best interest of our town, decided to cancel the event.
Yeah, we'd like that $500,000. Thank you. Let's
Yes,
keep
a little bit of
and-
economic pressure as well thrown in the mix. And of course, the organizers of that event, who were part of the local mosque, they said, look, this is Islamophobia. We just wanted to do an event where we would see, modesty as one of the values being portrayed. But apparently that's not happening.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the story there. Then another interesting story that's coming from the United States is, remember Donald Trump advertised the Big Beautiful Bill, which is a bill contained all kinds of economic reforms.
I heard something, yeah.
One of the reforms was if you are studying a degree that has low earning potential,
like theology for me.
Like theology, you should not get any kind of federal student loans, subsidized loans.
Oh. Great.
So, if you're into philosophy or history or this and that,
arts.
Basically they'll look at what are the medium salary for people aged between 24 and 32-year-olds in your state, and if that particular activity is below average, we're not going to be subsidizing you. We're not going to help. But the thing is, theology students are concerned because that would take basically 50% of theology students in America and maybe 90% of theology masters students. And now there's, a lobby trying to advocate for, hey, can we have theology as an exception? Because these young people, they are going to university not because they are attracted by a huge salary, but because they're responding to a call from God and to serve people. And this is like a legitimate need in the country.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's going to happen now, but these submissions are being sent.
I guess it makes sense from Trump's perspective. He's a businessman. He's like, all right, are we wasting money? Are we ever going to see these loans repaid? That makes sense from that perspective. But I also see that there are some exceptions that need to be made
and I think
for the greater good.
You're absolutely right. So when a new law comes in, the law is just seeing the big picture, low definition. And then when you drop the law bomb, then people have to say, hey, wait a minute, this is going to have some unintended effects.
Yeah.
So let's see what's going to happen in that space. But at the moment, there is a big lobby from the representatives of theology courses in the United States to say, hey, can we please have theology as an exception? Because we think that this is a different category altogether.
Yeah. Okay.
So we will see what's going to happen. We're now going to be listening to a song just chosen road. It's called Who Am I? And after the song, we are going to call in Rod Bailey, who is going to continue helping us learn more about making the move to the countryside. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Our text line is 0491-064-669. If you have any questions regarding how to move to the country, regarding gardening, regarding agriculture, or finding a property, text it in because we have an expert with us today our dear friend Rod Bailey, who is helping us to figure out how to move to the country. He's also a buyer's agent with extensive, over 50 years of experience in that sector, and he is going to share with us some elements. And I've been actually looking forward for this conversation, Lindsay.
Yeah.
So they're going to be talking about soil and vegetation.
Dirt. What
And
a
the
time.
likes. So, Rod, good morning to you. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. It's great to have you on board.
Morning, Joseph. Morning, Lindsay.
Good morning.
Rod, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, soil and vegetation. What are you going to, what do we have to look into those things when we are deciding to buy a property?
I wouldn't have taken you as a sort of geek, Joseph, but interesting. Hey, look,
You going to tell us about the
soil is
mycelium in the
definitely-
soil?
it's an important factor, especially in
Yeah.
our gardens and our orchard. But, you know, if we just go back to the basics, soil is definitely one of those things we need to be considering when we're looking at a country property, especially if you're looking to grow your own food. Now, definitely, soil can be built to a point. The country that we grow our market garden on, the soil is not particularly good. Many of our neighbours along the river have much better soil than we have. But the reason we chose the property, even though the soil is pretty ordinary, is because it has a fantastic water supply. And so in the order, if you like, of importance, I've always put water supply higher than soil, and sometimes you've got to make a compromise, and that's what we did. But basically this, soil to some degree, maybe even to a large degree, determines the agricultural potential of a property. And this means our home garden as well, and our home orchard. Some soils are just hard to grow on, and we call that hard country. And so, you know, in any particular locality, there's probably some properties that have what we call soft country and some that have hard country. And we call it that simply because in soft country, it's relatively easy to grow food, whether that's a garden or an orchard. And a hard country, it takes a lot more time and effort to develop that soil to the point where it's giving you a really good return.
I see.
Whether it's soft or hard country can be determined by a few things, like up the river and in the mountains behind us, the parent material, if you like, the rock, is up there. It's granite, it's hard country, whereas three valleys south from us is a locality called Hannam Vale, and up in the mountains behind that is the beautiful Comboyne, which has volcanic basalt soil. And over a couple of thousand years, that soil has actually washed off the mountain and down into the valley. So Hannam Vale has beautiful soil for any sort of agricultural pursuit, whereas where we are in Rowlands Plains, because of the parent material up in the mountains, it's pretty ordinary soil. But definitely something to consider when you're looking at a property.
But how do you look? Because if you're going to the property, are you allowed to take a soil sample to analyze? Can you take your hoe with you and start, digging some holes in this property that it's not even yours? Or you're just kind of how do you investigate to see if the soil is hard soil, if it's good soil, if it's or if it's as you mentioned, soft country? How do you make that judgment?
Okay, so the very first thing to do before you dig a hole is just have a look at the type of vegetation, and you'll become more and more familiar with because the vegetation can reliably tell you what type of soil it is, but that might take a bit of experience. But the other thing you can do is have a look at what's growing there, as in what people are growing. You know, if you're going past fields of lucerne, or if you're going past fields of corn, or if you're seeing orchards everywhere, if there's a lot of agriculture happening in the region, then the soil is... Sorry, I'm just being disturbed. Sorry, you just do what you need to do, Desley. Sorry, Desley's working in the kitchen near me, and she needs to make some noise.
I'm sure she has important requests.
Yeah, that's right. Keep Mama happy. So have a look at what is happening in the locality, and that will give you a really good indication of of the type of soil, because farmers don't spend a lot of time and effort, dramatically having to improve their soil if just in the next valley there's really good soil, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. This is fascinating. What kind of vegetation can we look up, like that would give away a good soil versus a bad soil? Is there any particular weed or plant? Because for the untrained eye, such as my own, I would just see a bunch of eucalyptus and judge. Well, the eucalyptus can grow pretty much anywhere.
Right. That's right. And because Australia is such a vast and different place, there's not really one weed or plant. But here's the thing. If you look at the eucalyptus trees, if that's what and they're pretty sparse, the soil underneath is probably going to be pretty hard. But if you're in a rainforesty country where there's lots of vegetation, where it's hard to walk through or even look through, that's one indicator. And obviously there's an interplay here between soil and water. You can have beautiful soil in the desert. Some of the Australian desert soils is some of the best that we've got, but there's no rainfall. But what you can do is look at one, like we live in Rollins Plains, okay? And if you look along the creek flats and some of the rainforesty gullies, there's beautiful forest, okay? But then if you look up on the ridges, where the soil used to be, but it's eroded off over the time, you can see we're looking at a different type of forest, and it's much more sparse, etc. So that's one indication. But then, as you say, Joseph, there's no problem with you taking a shovel to look at a property. And if you're digging around and you're finding lots of rocks and, it's really hard to dig into, knowing that dry soil is harder to dig into than wet soil, that definitely gives you an indication. And if you're serious about a property, no real estate agent or no vendor will object to you taking a sample and sending it off to get analysed.
Oh, that is very interesting. I actually want to talk about that. So how does that process of analyzing soil work? Like, is it expensive? And this is something, as you mentioned, that, people would not object to. And the other question that I have is, like you mentioned, that properties near a river, they often have better soil, but at the same time, at what point do the risks of flooding, for example, mitigate the idea that, I have a great soil, but I cannot plant anything, because if whatever I plant is going to be underwater, very few species of trees or plants will survive. How do you, for the average person, like how do you make those compromises? It's so hard.
Okay, so second thing first. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat this morning. Second thing first, definitely floodplain or river flat country is usually got better soil than the ridges behind it, simply because the good soil over time has eroded down, into the river or creek flats. And the only way really that you'll know if something floods is by talking to neighbours. Remember, you can't always trust what the real estate agent tells you, but if you come back at a subsequent time, maybe not on the first inquiry, but if you're thinking, this is a wonderful property and I might want to look into this deeper, do a bit more research, just knock on the door of your neighbours, and they'll quickly give you a completely unbiased view whether that property floods or not. Second thing is soil analysis. Getting your soil tested is really cheap. The lab that I use is attached to the the Southern Cross University up at Lismore. You just get on their website. I can't remember what the particular lab is called, but you get on their website. They will give you advice on how to take the soil sample, and then you just put it in a jar and send it to them. And depending on what if you're just wanting a basic soil test, it'll cost you $50 or $60 sort of thing, and that's a pretty good investment to make if you're looking to spend many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars on buying a property. That becomes more important, obviously if you're looking to buy a property to farm on. But even for a home, I've said before on the breakfast show that even a home gardener can get real benefit from spending that sort of money on a soil test, simply because we might be putting a whole heap of fertiliser into our home garden that we don't really need. Our soil doesn't really need. Yeah.
That is an interesting point. And what else can we learn about the vegetation that is in existence in the property, other than perhaps the quality of soil? Is there any other element that we should be aware of when we're looking for a property in terms of the vegetation?
Yeah, vegetation is something that you can change, but something that you can't change at the same time. If you're looking at a property and there's not enough trees, it's very easy to plant some trees, and in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you've got lovely trees there. But it's really hard to get clearing approval these days. So if you want a property that's got trees, but it's pastured as well, and it's nice and open so you can get the views, but the property you're looking at is all bush, it's really hard to get clearing approval from the government these days, and it takes a lot of money. A great cost and effort goes into clearing land, okay? And so just keep that in mind. If the property hasn't got enough trees to your liking, you can always grow trees. But if it's got too many trees, before you sign on the dotted line, make sure that you can get clearing approval, especially in properties that have bushfire risk. If you're way out in the sticks and there's a lot of bush around, it may prove hard to clear enough land around your house or your building sort of thing to give you the safety that you need. Now, there are what's called asset protection zones, and so every council has to give you permission to clear a certain amount of land. I think it depends a little bit on the locality, but your council will quickly tell you how big an asset protection zone you can clear around the built environment. But that just needs to be something that you consider. So bushfire risk is very real in the Australian country, so keep that in mind. Another question to ask is, if there is a lot of forest on the property, is this harvestable? Are there trees large enough that we could get a contractor in to actually harvest and send off to the sawmill? Because that can be a source of income. Especially, if you're continuing to develop the property and your cash flow's a little bit low, maybe taking some trees off the property may be a good source of cash flow.
I remember one of my friends. Yes, Rod, on that. I remember one of my friends who's a gardener in Brazil. That was his bank savings, he would say. Whenever he needed money for a project, for example, to pay for a wedding of some of his child, he's just chopping through 2 or 3 big trees, and that's going to provide the funds. So he already planted those trees 15, 20 years back with those intentions in mind.
Yeah, that's true. And here in Australia, it kind of depends on where you are. If there's a sawmill close by or relatively close by, your trees might be worth some money, especially now because most state governments in Australia have pretty well locked up the forest that they manage. And so historically, tree logs haven't been worth a lot of money, but they are worth more now because they're becoming more and more scarce. But just be aware that the further that the logs need to be carted, trucked to the sawmill, the less money you'll actually end up with. I'm not saying you're going to get rich by harvesting logs off your property, but it can be a source of cash flow.
Amazing.
But another thing to consider with regards to vegetation is in Australia, there's all sorts of weeds and woody plants that are pests and prescribed as prohibited matter under the different biosecurity acts in each state. And if you've got those weeds on your property, they need to be reported to the authorities, and then you are required to get rid of those weeds, those prohibited weeds. And so that can be a costly and time-consuming effort as well. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. If you're seeing some funky-looking plants, especially ones with big thorns or fruit that have got big prickles on them sort of thing.
We're talking like lantana and stuff like that?
Lantana, I don't know that it's definitely a problem, but as far as I know, you're not required to clear lantana off. But there's things like the soda apple jumps to mind, but there's a whole heap of things. You know, there's even water hyacinth and plants that grow in dams that are prohibited matter. So it's just worthwhile asking the question of someone that knows whether that's going to be a problem down the track, because, as I say, it can be costly and time consuming to deal with. So there's a few factors for you to consider.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rod. This is a fascinating factors to take into account to make an informed decision. By the way, if you are interested, listener, in hiring a buyer's agent to find yourself an amazing property here in New South Wales, perhaps even in Australia, I don't know. But look, it's worthwhile having a chat with Rod. If you need his contact details, text me here to 0491 064669, and we can share it with you. We also got a message here from Naomi, Rod. This one is for you. She said, hey guys, definitely a topic we have been thinking a lot about with food prices set to rise and with a big family. We have been looking at moving to New South Wales and are looking to buy a small acreage that we can manage on our own, probably around 20 acres or so, to try to be self-sufficient and have animals and fruit and vegetables. What would be a few good suburbs in New South Wales that off the top of your head you think typically have water and decent soil to grow in, but then not completely isolated, as we need to be at least within an hour or less of schools and a church? That's a big question there. How would you like to respond to that one? Rather, would you like me to share your contact details with Naomi, and maybe we can go from there? What do you reckon?
Yeah, please share my contact details with Naomi, because there's so many more factors that need to be considered before I'd be able to nail down some specific localities, because anywhere from the Victorian border to the Queensland border on the coast side of things could meet Naomi and her family's objectives there, and so there's probably other factors that we need to take into consideration. But she's really on the money, you know, some water, proximity to population, church, schools, et cetera, so she's already partway down preparing her her property brief, if you like. But I think there's some more factors there that need to be rounded out. So I'd be really happy to talk to Naomi about that and maybe give her a little bit more direction. Fantastic. But that's exactly the process we go through, you know, big picture needs and wants, and then narrow it down so that we can start looking in specific localities.
Amazing. Rod Bailey, thank you so much for joining us today with another episode on the most comprehensive guide on Australian radio on how to buy a property in the field.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.